Okay, so these equations that we're going to look at are going to be quadratic. So number one, you have, and this number one is going to be a review, by the way, just number one. You have 8x squared equal 4x plus 1. 8x squared equals 4x plus 1. And you want to solve this equation. Now, first of all, what kind of equation is this?
Quadratic.
It's quadratic. And if you're going to solve this quadratic equation, what might you want to do to this equation that you see? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What was that?
Reorder it.
Reorder it? Okay, so in other words, put it in what form?
Distance.
Standard form? All right. So remember, you want to write it as ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So you want 0 on the other side. So I'm going to bring everything to the left-hand side. So when I do that, I'm going to get 8x squared minus 4x minus 1 equals 0. And then before we use a quadratic formula, it's a good idea to determine what a, b, and c are. What's a in this case? 8. 8, right? The coefficient. What's b? Negative 4. And what's c? Negative 1. All right, so remember the quadratic formula is negative b, the opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared, minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. All right, so let's see what we get. We get x equal. All right, what's the opposite of b? Positive 4, plus or minus the square root of b. Now remember, b squared minus 4ac, that discriminant, put all those values in parentheses. So in parentheses, I'm going to put b, and what's b?
Negative 4.
Negative 4, and I'm squaring it. So when I square this, though, is b squared ever going to be negative? No, because whenever you square b, if b is negative and you square it, it becomes what kind of number?
Imaginary.
No. B squared, a negative times a negative is a positive,
A negative.
right? Okay, a positive times a positive is still a what? Positive. If b is 0, what's 0 times 0? 0. So I'm asking you, is b squared ever going to be negative? No, it's either going to be positive or it's going to be 0. So this should never be negative. So don't say this is negative 16.
Positive.
It's positive 16. Minus 4 times a, what's a in this case?
8.
8 times c, which is negative 1, all divided by 2 times a, which is 8. So make sure when you extend the division symbol, you go from 4 all the way to the end of that square root symbol. Okay, now let's simplify this. I get 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared, 16. What's a negative 4 times 8 times a negative 1? No, it's not negative 32. See, that's one area you would have messed up. You wouldn't have got all your points. I'm going to say it again. What's a negative 4 times a positive 8 times a negative 1? Positive 32. Divided by 16. So you need to be careful with this. You need as many points as you can get. Okay, what's 16 plus 32? There's a lot of you that don't know what 16 plus 32 is. All right, you get 48, right? All right, am I done? No, you're not done. You know from experience, from what we've done in this course, that what else do you need to do? You need to simplify the square root of 48. So let's go off to the side and figure out what that is. What's the largest perfect square that goes into 48? 16. 16 times 3, right? And what's the square? And so I can write the square root of 16 times 3 as the product of two square roots. So that's the square root of 16 times the square root of 3. And what's the square root of 16? So I get 4 square root of 3. So this becomes 4 plus or minus 4 square root of 3 divided by 16. Now, for the most part, you're done, but you wouldn't get full credit versus someone else that did something else to this. Because it does say to simplify. And I can simplify this expression even further. Because look, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. I want you to notice something, and this is a good idea for you to do this. When you get to this point, you need to circle this number, the coefficient of the radical, and the denominator. And then you need to ask yourself, do these three things I have circled have anything in common besides the factor of 1? 4. So when you look at this, and you think of 4 as a common factor, 4 to 4 is 1, 4 to 4 is 1, 4 to 16 is 4. And so the answer then would be, to get all your points, you would say 1 plus or minus. Now don't say 1 square root of 3, because you know 1 square root of 3 is just what? Square root of 3, all divided by 4. So that would be your answer. If you want all your 10 points, that's what you would say. All right. Now, what kind of solutions are these? Rational or irrational? Irrational. So these are irrational solutions. So that's why you see it written like this. Okay, let's do number 2. Number 2. All right, in number 2, you have this equation. You have x squared minus 4x equal negative 8. X squared minus 4x equal negative 8. Again, what kind of equation is this? Quadratic. Is it in the form I need it to be in? No, because I need 0 on that other side. So let's go ahead and rewrite this. So when I add 8 to both sides, I'm going to get x squared minus 4x, and then what do I write? Come on, guys. Plus 8 equal what? 0. All right, what's A?
1.
B?
-4.
And C? Positive 8. All right, so you're going to take these values for A, B, and C, and you're going to substitute them into the formula. So the solution would be x equal the opposite of B. What's the opposite of -4? Positive 4, plus or minus the square root of, in parentheses, I put -4, because that's B, and I'm squaring that. Minus 4 times A is 1, times C, which is 8. All divided by 2 times 1. So let's go ahead and simplify the discriminant, the radicand. So I get 4 plus or minus the square root of, what's -4 squared? 16. What's the -4 times 1 times 8? -32. All divided by 2. And then we simplify the radicand even further. What's 16 minus 32? What is it? -16 all over 2. All right, so that's what I have. Now, am I done? No. Because if I look at the square root of a -16, if I rewrite it right here, I know that I'm going to end up with what number?
Imaginary.
That imaginary number. I know I'm going to need an I in here. So this becomes the square root of a -1 times the square root of 16. If you need to write it like this, you write it like this. And we know by definition that the square root of a -1 is what number? I. We know the square root of 16 is what number? 4. But don't write it as I4, write it as what? 4I. So always rewrite it as with I on the end. So this becomes 4 plus or minus 4I, all divided by 2. All right, so you're at this point. You're almost done. You get most of your points, almost all of your points. You wouldn't get all of it. Because, remember we did it a while ago. We got to this point right here, and I said circle this number, the coefficient of the square root, and the denominator. So when I get to this point, the same idea. I'm going to circle 4. I'm going to circle the coefficient of I. What's the coefficient of I?
4.
4. I'm going to circle the denominator. Do those three things I have circled, do they have anything, do I have a factor in common besides 1? 2. So when I when I look at it again and I use that idea that all these terms are divisible by 2, 2 into 4 is 2, 2 into 4 is 2, 2 into 2 is 1. So this right here becomes 2 plus or minus 2i, all divided by what number? 1. But don't leave it like that, because you know that anything divided by 1 is that thing, right? So the answer is just 2 plus or minus 2i. Okay? All right, number 3. Let's look at number 3. All right. So this isn't that bad because you've had enough experience to use a quadratic formula. You had 2 worksheets that were due. And you've had enough experience with the idea of the imaginary unit, the square root of a negative 1. And all you do is just put them all together. So when you look at number 3, you have 4x squared equal 3x minus 5. 4x squared equal 3x minus 5. Okay, what kind of equation is this?
Quadratic.
Quadratic. Is it in the form I want it in? No. So let's go ahead and rewrite this in standard form. How are you going to write this? 4x squared minus 3x plus 5 equal 0. Now once you put it in that form you need it in that standard form, then you indicate what A, B, and C are. What's A in this case? 4. What's B in this case? Negative 3. And what's C? 5. And then all you do is just plug this back into your quadratic formula, into the quadratic formula. So remember, x equal the opposite of b. B is negative 3. What's the opposite of negative 3? Positive 3. Plus or minus the square root of, in parentheses, I put b. B is negative 3. And I'm squaring it. Minus 4 times a. A is 4. Times c, which is 5. All divided by 2 times a. And a is 4. So I get 3 plus or minus. At this point, just simplify the radicand as much as you can. Negative 3 squared is 9. A negative 4 times 5.
Negative 80.
Negative 80. Okay. All divided by 8. So I get 3 plus or minus the square root of
71.
negative 71, right?
Yes.
Over 8. Now again, don't leave your answer like this. If you want all your points, you better go further with this. What do you remember by the square root of a negative number? That's that imaginary unit. So you need to rewrite this with I. So off to the side, if you think about the square root of a negative 71, do you all agree that the square root of negative 71 means the same thing as the square root of a negative 1 times the square root of 71? By definition, the square root of a negative 1 is I. Now, can I simplify the square root of 71? 71 is what kind of number? Huh? 71 is prime. Okay, so there's no other perfect square than 1 that goes into 71. Now remember, there's some of you that still persist on putting I behind the square root. You got to be careful when you do that, because some of you are writing it like this. And to me, see how I wrote it? To me, it looks like that I is under the square root. Is it supposed to be under the square root? No. So don't do that. To be on the safe side, don't put I behind the square root. Put it in front. So leave it like I squared to 71, like I have it here. So then I get 3 plus or minus I squared root of 71, all divided by 8. Now remember in the previous two problems we circled some items. So we circled 4, 4, 10, 16, and number 2 we circled 4, the coefficient of I, and the denominator. If you want to circle again, you can. Okay, so look. You see that square root right here? I would leave that imaginary number alone, and then the I, and just think of this right here as being what number? 1. So if you look at 3, 1, and 8, do 3, 1, and 8 have any other common factor other than 1? No. So this is your answer. Okay, number 4. All right, number 4, let's suppose we had 3x squared minus 4x equal negative 5. So 3x squared minus 4x equal negative 5. What's the first thing you're going to do? Rewrite it in standard form. So when you do that, you get 3x squared minus 4x, and then what else? Plus 5 equals 0. At that point, you indicate what A, B, and C are. What's A? 3. What's B? And C? 5. So it's just a matter now just substituting these values into the quadratic formula. So I get x equal the opposite of b. What's the opposite of negative 4? Positive 4. Plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared. Minus 4 times a is 3, times c, which is 5. All of that is being divided by 2 times 3. 2 times a. So let's simplify the radicand. So I get 4 plus or minus the square root of, what's negative 4 squared? 16. What's a negative 4 times 3 times 5? Negative 60. All divided by 6. But what's 16 minus 60? Negative 44. All divided by 6. All right, so that's where I'm at. Okay, are you going to get all your points if you leave it like this? No. Because you know you can simplify the square root of a negative 44. So if I go off to the side and I look at the square root of a negative 44, I know mathematically I can write this as the square root of a negative 1 in terms of the square root of 44. And I know by definition the square root of a negative 1 is I. And I also know that besides 1, there's another perfect square that goes into 44, and what is that? 4. So I can rewrite this as 4 times 11. And the square root of 4, I know, is what? 2. So this becomes 2i square root of 11. So that goes here. So that becomes 4 plus or minus 2i square root of 11 divided by 6. Now, if this were 10 points, I would give you 9 out of the 10 if you got that far. Because what else can you do? You can simplify this because see that 4, 2, and the 6? So if I go ahead and I just rewrite it right here for a moment. So if I circle these, they're all divisible by 2. So 2 and the 4 is 2, 2 and the 2 is 1, 2 and the 6 is 3. So what, if you want all your points, what should you write? 2 plus or minus I squared root of 11 all over 3. Okay. All right. Okay, let's do one more. So let's get number 5. All right, number 5. So number 5, let's suppose we had this problem. We had 3 x squared plus 2x equal negative 2. So 3x squared plus 2x equal negative 2. All right, what's the first thing you're going to do? What was that? Rewrite it. So we get 3x squared plus 2x, what else? Plus 2 equal 0. What's A? 3. What's B? And what's C? 2. All right. So A is 3, B is 2, C is 2. So you substitute to your formula, so I get x equal the opposite of b. If b is 2, what's the opposite of that?
Negative.
Negative 2. Plus or minus the square root of b, and what's b? 2. I'm squaring it, right? Minus 4 times a is 3, and c is 2, all divided by 2 times what number? 3, because 2 times a, and a is 3. So I get negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared is 4. Now what's a negative 4 times 3 times 2?
Negative 24.
Negative 24. All divided by 6. All right. Negative 2 plus or minus the square root of what number?
20.
Not 20. Negative 20. You got to be careful. You put 20, you're not getting your full credit. It's supposed to be negative 20. All right. If you stop there, you don't get your full credit either, because what else do you know you can do? You can simplify the square root of a negative 20. So if I go off to the side and I look at the square root of a negative 20, I know I can rewrite the square root of a negative 20 as the square root of a negative 1 times the square root of 20. And I know the square root of a negative 1 is I, by definition. And I also know that what perfect square goes into 20? 4, so that's 4 times 5. And then remember, I can write this as I times the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. But what is the square root of 4? 2. Now, knowing how we prefer to write this, how are you going to rewrite those factors? 2i square root of 5. Good. So 2i square root of 5. Now this becomes 2 plus or minus 2i square root of 5, all divided by 6. Am I done? No. Because if I look at 2 plus or minus 2i square root of 5 divided by 6, and I circle what I told you to keep circling when I get to this point, what do you notice about those three things I have circled? It's supposed to, oh, I'm sorry, thank you, negative 2. So what do you notice about these three things I have circled? They're all divisible by 2. So when I look at it, when I look at this, 2 into negative 2 is a negative 1, 2 into 2 is 1, 2 into 2 is 1. So what would be the answer you would give me? Negative 1 plus or minus I squared is 6, right? Don't say divided by 1, because I expect you to know that this numerator divided by 1 is just the numerator. So it's negative 1 plus or minus I. I'm sorry? Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. That was 6, right? I'm not sure why I put a 2 here. So that's supposed to be 6, and then when you divide it by 2, you get what number? 3. So negative 1 plus or minus I squared is 6, all divided by what?
The index is 5.
Good Lord, what am I doing? So square root of 5, right?
Yeah.
I just want to put 6 all over the place. All divided by what? 3. Is everything written correctly now? All right. Not sure what's happening there. But you notice that on the test that you could have done the same thing, so you got to be careful. You know, just because you're trying to do this real quick, you can easily make the mistakes that I just did. All right, so any questions? All right, so that's the end of that part.